I have unfinished business. 2 years ago, I started a series where I tried to beat the Calamity Mod using daggers only. However, that series never made it past the first episode. That hasn't sat well with me ever since, and I've always wanted to revisit this challenge. So that's exactly what I'm going to do in this video, and I've given myself just 100 days to do it. There are 33 daggers I'm aiming to collect as part of this challenge, and at the moment I can't get any of them. Instead, I chop down some cactus in the desert and dive into a snow cave, where I'm lucky enough to find a blizzard in a bottle which I quickly take back to spawn. Here I get to work building some basic houses so NPCs can move in. We only have 100 days to work with, so aesthetics are not important. On the morning of day 2 I make some armour using the cactus I'd collected for extra defense, only later remembering the damage it dealt to enemies. This little revelation leads me to my first set of daggers, crafted from wool from scrap. With these, I can now delve deeper into my world without being swarmed with enemies, and after mining various veins of platinum, I craft my second weapon at the end of day 2, the gleaming dagger. Day 3 was spent underground, increasing my health and obtaining the items I needed to start a magic storage system. Then on the start of day 4 I craft my first set of rogue armour using items from the snow biome. Just in time too, as barely a minute later I'm struck by my first proper combat test, the slime rain. I fashion a basic arena using some platforms, a campfire and a bass statue, then after killing enough of his minions, King Slime himself joins the battle. The stealth strike of the gleaming dagger made short work of King Slime, marking the first of many bosses I'd have to defeat on my journey. And after some more early game grinding on day 5, the second boss decides to try its luck too. Defeating the eye triggers a toxic downpour at the sulphurous sea, so on the morning of day 6 I travel east to take it on. Playing as a rogue, the acid rain is very useful as it gives access to a new armour set. Crafted with acid wood and the sulphuric scales dropped from the enemies during the event, the sulphurous armour gives increased rogue and stealth damage, along with a double jump on par with the sandstorm in a bottle. Day 7 was spent mostly building houses around the world, starting with the jungle. I decided instead of building my own structure, I'd borrow this pre-made one from nature. And only while editing this did I begin to consider the ethics of placing the dryad inside a hollowed out tree. If you're not quite sure what I mean by that, then you obviously haven't spent hours researching Terraria lore, and to that I say, good choice. Next up came the ocean housing, which was interrupted by some pesky goblins before I could finish working on it. At this stage, the goblins act as only a distraction. However, at least they'll be a useful one. After spending most of day 8 searching for the Goblin Tinkerer, I search within my soul and decide to save him. While he may still put me into crippling debt, at least his reforges are more consistent than in vanilla. I emerge from the mines on day 9 with almost full health and the Tinkerer's workshop, which I use to upgrade and combine some of my accessories. I then spend the rest of the day exploring the underground desert, stumbling upon a shrine that contained both the Luxor's Gift and Desert Medallion. So I return home and craft a new weapon to use against this next boss, the infamous Crystalline. This weapon seems to pop up in almost everyone's first playthrough of Calamity, and it's easy to see why. Let's go test it out on the Scourge. The splitting projectiles of the Crystalline are perfect against the many segments of the Scourge, and before long it falls. A few times actually, and by the end of it I have 3 treasure bags to open. There's not really much I can use from these though, so most of it gets sold to line the Goblin's pockets. The next boss on my list, and also the source of the next dagger, is Crabulon. So I spend the rest of day 10 clearing out a space in the glowing mushroom biome, and then on day 11 I spawn the Mushroom Menace. I get lucky enough to obtain the Myco root from the first bag I open, and even more lucky that it comes with the best modifier. Filled with confidence from the fight, I don't waste any time in heading straight to the Crimson to take on the Brain of Cthulhu. The short range but high attack speed of the Myco root made it perfect for combating the Brain's final phase. After returning home I open the treasure bag and equip the Brain of Confusion for that sweet adrenaline saving dodge. I also craft the Deathbringer pickaxe to help dig out my elevator, which is an excellent time to pause and take stock of our progress. It's currently the dawn of day 12, and so far I've killed 5 out of the 40 bosses and collected 4 out of the 33 daggers in the game. Given how difficult I know the late game can be, I don't want to be in pre-hard mode for any longer than 25 days, so we need to step it up a gear. Mine Hellstone. Build bridge across hell. Craft Voodoo Demon Voodoo Doll to stop Voodoo Demons spawning. Craft Demon Conch. Mine Obsidian. Get distracted and catch ladybugs. Craft Infernal Creed. Craft Fishing Rod. Fish. A lot. Complete fishing quest. Pray the angler gives you the right item. Find the Aether. Convert to the right item. Get permanent upgrades. Reforge items. Craft Terraspark boots. Upgrade storage. Kill fire imps in the underworld for the Ashen Stalactite. Get Ashen Stalactite from chest instead. Craft potions for upcoming boss fight. Spawn the Perforators. The splash damage of the Infernal Cree proved to be very potent against the worms spawned by the Perforator Hive, so before long it's defeated. This victory brings with it a new ore to the floating islands, Aerialite. I finish off day 16 by mining a bunch of this, and then craft a set of skyline wings and the next dagger in the form of the feather knives. These were one of my favourites in the entire playthrough, and would remain useful throughout the rest of pre-hard mode. To finish off the Aerialite craze, I crafted the feather crown. However, I didn't make the full set of armour, as I still wanted the extra jump from the sulphurous set. That night, after building a small arena, I spawned Skeletron. With Skeletron defeated, I descended into the dungeon in search of the next dagger. With a 10% chance to drop from Dark Casters, the Shinobi Blade will spawn healing orbs after defeating an enemy, making it an excellent option for regaining health against hordes of enemies. I spent the rest of day 18 and then all of day 19 on smaller quality of life features, including crafting a void bag and building housing for the cavern's pylon. Once the bandit moves in, I bought the Cinquedia, the second last dagger of pre-hard mode. I then returned to my quality of life quest, with a herb farm and some extra fishing, and on the morning of day 20 I summoned the Slime God. My first attempt may have ended in failure, but it gave me the exact practice I needed to take them down a second time. Using its drops, I craft a set of statogel armour and some gel darts, the last daggers in pre-hard mode. Now, all that stood between me and hard mode was some extra width on the Hell Bridge and a bit of fishing in the Brimstone Crag. The shadowfish found in the lava here can be crafted into powerful potions for the rogue class. With these, I was finally ready for the Wall of Flesh. With my goal of entering hard mode in the first 25 days looming, I brought forth all the focus I could muster and summoned the wall for one final attempt. With the wall speeding up the lower its health got, it became harder and harder to get stealth strikes. However, with one last throw of a gel dart, the wall was defeated and hard mode began. My first priority was to get a better weapon so I could defend myself against the new enemies present in my world. Luckily, one option is easily available right at the start of hard mode. After mining some cobalt underground, I turn it into bars and then turn those bars into kunai. Another of my favourite weapons in this playthrough. I use these to take down some wyverns at the start of day 26, then travel to the newly formed Astral Infection biome to work towards a new set of armour. Titan Hearts dropped from the rare Atlas enemies can be combined with the Astral Wood to make Titan Heart armour, a rogue set aimed predominantly at stealth builds. That's exactly what I wanted though, with my Cobalt Kunai having a very powerful stealth attack where 3 homing bolts would be fired instead of 1 basic dagger. I wanted to give myself other options though, so I set my sights on the Prismaline, the hard mode upgrade to the Crystalline. This required materials dropped from the hard mode Giant Clam, but unfortunately my first 3 attempts ended in death. Finally, right at the end of day 27, I defeated the clam and returned home to craft a new weapon. While it's not terrible, the Prismaline is outclassed by the Cobalt Kunai in most situations, so was relegated to the role of sidearm. I spent most of day 28 fishing in the Hallow, then on day 29 I set up an artificial corruption to get the cursed dagger. I really should have thought of this when I was creating the world and chose Crimson, but I didn't and now I'm here. On the bright side, it means that I can fish to have access to both Rage and Wrath potions. After spending most of the day here, I still don't have the Cursed Dagger, so I decide to move on and try my first mech that night. I was planning for this to be Skeletron Prime, but the game had other plans. Armed with the Cobalt Kunai, the twins quickly fell to the homing bolts, unlocking the next tier of ores and the 3 new weapons that came with it. Early hard mode in this challenge comes with a lot of weapon options, with a total of 6 daggers being available right after killing 1 mech boss. The downside? We've burned through half of our hard mode weapon options after defeating just 1 boss, meaning later on upgrades will be few and far between. After mining the new ores, I craft the next 2 daggers, those being Mithril Knives and Orichalcum Gemstones. The Mithril Knives are a little disappointing, and the Cobalt Kunai are still the obvious choice for single hitbox enemies. But for larger groups, or mobs with multiple segments, the Orichalcum Gemstones shine. I forgot about the Stormfront Razor on day 30 and spent most of it looking for Life Root in the jungle, but on day 31 I do eventually craft it. And, wanting to try out all my new weapons against a worthy opponent, I spent the next 2 days obtaining a variety of summon items for a mini boss rush on day 33. Since it was raining and Cryogen is an awful fight during a blizzard, I decided to skip him for now while I got some upgrades. Using the souls dropped by the mechs, I upgraded my boots to the angel dreads, remembered that the evasion scarf existed as an upgrade to the counter scarf, then crafted a pickaxe axe and swung over to the jungle for a quick queen bee fight. I can't quite remember why I did this, but I did nothing with her drops and spent the rest of day 34 grinding for Ankh charm materials. The morning of day 35 was spent in the jungle maxing out my health on life root, and even surpassing that with the use of a blood orange. Then, at night I tried my first attempt against the Calamity clone. I got very close to winning, but died during the final bullet hill. The next day I flatten out an arena in the snow biome to fight Cryogen, but unfortunately it's still raining, so instead of fighting him, I take this time to clear out my magic storage system of all the unneeded weapons and accessories I'd collected. While doing this, the weather clears up, but mere minutes later it's back to raining. I couldn't wait any longer though, so I teleported to the snow pylon and spawned the coolest boss in Calamity. With my post-mech upgrades, this ice cube stood no chance, and after defeating him I tunneled through the ice caves below to find the new cryonic ore. After mining enough, I returned home to craft a full set of Daedalus armour along with wings and the ornate shield, which grants a dash and some defensive boosts. I was now ready to take on the clone again, however, since it was daytime, I instead went to the jungle to give Plantera a try. The fight was quickly derailed by a surprise queen bee spawn, but that wasn't even the main problem. My damage was simply too low to take down this beefy plant. After over 10 minutes, I finally got her down to under 10,000 health, but unfortunately I'm not built for endurance sports, so she defeats me before I can take her down. I waste very little time in starting my rematch with the Calamity clone, and end up dying at the same point as before. With day 38 came a new construction project in the Hallowed. Once again, nothing too fancy, this was mainly just to solve some overflow issues and allow the drunk princess to spawn. I then remembered rogue weapons are affected by flasks, so make some crumbling ones in the hope that that might help my damage, before returning to build more housing, this time in the desert. Later on the morning of day 39, the drunk princess moves in and I burn through some platinum for candles. Powerful arena buffs which might just turn the tide in my favour. I space them out on my arena and wait for night, then when it comes, I summon the Calamity clone one final time. This time the final bullet hell seemed to come and go much quicker than before, and soon after this knockoff Calamitas was defeated. Shortly after, I travelled to the underground jungle for my rematch with Plantera. This was definitely an endurance battle. Due to my relatively high defense and damage reduction, Plantera's attacks didn't deal much damage. The issue is that neither did mine. From start to finish, the fight took over 8 minutes, much higher than I'd have liked. After the fight, I finally remembered about the cursed dagger, so spent some time in my artificial corruption biome to get it. Thankfully, this process doesn't take too long, and gives me another weapon in my arsenal. That's not the only one though. Now that Plantera has been defeated, the bandit has started selling monkey darts. I buy a few, then prepare for an expedition to the Abyss, which now has some new treasures to be found. Most enemies here will now drop depth cells, luminal, or both, and after gathering enough of these, I use them to craft the Abyssal Mirror, a very powerful accessory for stealth-based rogues. I was now halfway through day 41, and the next boss on my list was the Leviathan and Anahita, which have a 33% chance of dropping the next dagger I wanted. After building a basic arena over the ocean, I start the fight. Surprisingly, the Cobalt Kunai still outpaced the monkey darts against Anahita. The fact that their homing worked well against her fast moving and small hitbox. Against the Leviathan, however, the monkey darts came out on top, making it difficult to know what to use in the third phase when they attack together. Regardless of which weapon was better, they still fell all the same. However, I wasn't lucky enough to get the drop I wanted from the treasure bag, so we'll revisit this later. For now though, I delve into the dungeon to get some ectoplasm to upgrade my dash to the Asgard's Valor, which additionally gives immunity from knockback and many debuffs. Being conscious of time and the fact that I won't have much in the endgame, I start working on the Codebreaker multi-block now, and place down as many power cell factories as I can for future upgrades. On day 43 it was time for an armour upgrade, so I searched the jungle temple for the fragments needed to make a solar tablet, and then used it to bring forth an eclipse. Many of the enemies in this event now drop solar veils, which can be used to craft rogue items. By nightfall I had collected enough to make the Umbraphile armour. Then I returned to my quest of building out the Codebreaker by searching for the jungle lab and starting the research of its schematic. While that processes, I travel to the far left side of the underworld to take its schematic too. For now, that's all the progress I can make on this, so for the rest of day 44 I build an arena in the Astral Infection, including the destruction of an entire sky island that got in the way. While doing this, I end up collecting 2 giant harpy feathers, so decided to switch to harpy wings. While these have worse flight stats than my starlight wings, they give a 20% buff to movement speed and give a chance to fire damaging feathers while I'm attacking. Before I can use my arena however, day 45 brings another acid rain event. I can't really get any upgrades from this, so I probably should have just ignored it, but for some reason I decided to fight my way through it, which thankfully didn't take long. I then finished up my astral arena and while waiting for night, dropped by the icy lab for the schematic it held. With night now upon me, I spawned Astrum Aureus and began the battle. With Astrum Aureus defeated, the Atlas enemies found within the biome will now drop a new dagger. I incorrectly thought these spawned in the underground and caverns, and spent way too long there before rechecking the wiki to find they spawn on the surface. Even now that I was looking in the right place, it still took a ridiculous amount of time for one to drop the item I wanted, but after almost all of day 46 had passed, I finally obtained the Stellar Knife. Some basic DPS tests with the target dummy proved quite promising, with this potentially being the first real upgrade since the Cobalt Kunai. On day 47 I put this to the test against Leviathan and Andahita, dying on the first attempt but succeeding on the second and third. This bled into the start of day 48, but in the third treasure bag I finally obtained the Leviathan teeth I was looking for, which ended up being pretty lackluster for all the effort I'd gone to obtaining them. With the halfway point of this challenge soon approaching, I set my sights on the golem found deep within the jungle temple. After battling my way through traps and lizards, I used one of the power cells I'd found to summon the golem. While this boss may be a pushover in vanilla, it's no joke in Revengeance mode, featuring many new attacks that become increasingly difficult to dodge as the fight goes on. It was only on my 4th attempt on day 49 that I came out on top, plunging me into the endgame section of hard mode. With the pixel dropped from Golem I delved deeper into the abyss in search of scoria ore, a burning hot metal that would scold me if I stood on it without protection, but it's absolutely fine to make an armour out of that covers me entirely. In addition to the armour, I also craft an upgraded set of wings before heading to the jungle to try my luck against the Plaguebringer Goliath. Unsurprisingly, my first attempt ended in failure, with the biggest issue being the large island at the centre of my arena. I spent the rest of day 50 clearing this out, and after regaining my composure and crafting a few more potions, I spawned the Goliath once again. Thankfully, my last two attempts had dialed in my reactions to the boss's attacks, and before long the Plaguebringer fell. I had to beat it once more on the morning of day 52 to get the actual drop I wanted, the Malachite. This rare dagger was once a Malice mode exclusive, so comes with two distinct attack methods separated by right or left clicking. However, the Stealth Strike is where its real power lies, acting as a spiritual successor to the Cobalt Kunai by throwing out 3 homing daggers that stick to enemies, dealing additional damage over time. I decided to test this out against the source of my next dagger, the Ravager, and to be honest, I wish I didn't. For whatever reason, I really struggled in this fight, being unable to get into a rhythm like I do with most bosses. It took 4 failed attempts before my first successful one, and even after that I still died on my next attempt straight after. Between fights I upgraded to steampunk wings, and after another 2 victories I obtained the next dagger in progression, the Corpus Averter. Before I use it, I remember about a gap in my collection from early pre-hard mode, so craft the Gilded Dagger only for it to never leave my storage system. The Stealth Strike of the Corpus Averter works rather strangely, having a 1 in 7 chance of halving the player's health. Its regular attack is rather useful though, creating homing red knives that grant lifesteal on enemy hits. With this dagger collected, I have just 1 left in hard mode, but it won't come easy. What is easy though is the Lunatic Cultist, which I take down on day 54 with very little difficulty. The ensuing lunar events grant me the meld blobs required to craft the Dark Matter Sheath, a powerful accessory that grants 10 extra stealth, 6% rogue damage, 6% rogue crit chance, and makes stealth strikes only consume half of my stealth. This upgrade proves incredibly useful against the lunar pillars, and so I take down the Stardust, Solar and Vortex pillars before pausing on day 55 to attempt the penultimate boss of hard mode and the guardian of its last dagger. My first attempt on day 55 was not successful, but after crafting some gravity normalization potions, I get back on my feet and try it again on day 56. With Astrodeus defeated, I can now mine the astral ore found at the centre of the biome, combining it with stardusts into astral bars and combining those with the prismaline to make the radiant star. The final dagger of hard mode. And so I spent most of day 57 extending my arena and removing any planetoids in the way. Then on the morning of day 58 I took down the nebula pillar and awaited the arrival of the Moon Lord. The fight was going really well, surprisingly well to be honest. I even managed to get adrenaline on 2 separate occasions, but with one bad dodge in his final phase I threw the fight. This knocked my confidence, then went on to impact my second attempt, but I felt my luck change when ladybugs began spawning around my base. Treating this as a good omen, I spawned the Moonlord a third time and set my sights on his demise. With the defeat of the Moonlord comes a variety of upgrades. First, I used the Luminite he dropped along with my Angel Treads and some wings to craft the Celestial Tracers. Then, after destroying one of the new planetoids for Exorium clusters, I don't use these to craft a set of Empyrean armour. Next comes the first dagger available post Moonlord, the Lunar Kunai. And after that the Luminite Crown, an upgrade to the Aerialite one from pre-hard mode. With all these upgrades, it's time to quickly kill the Moonlord 4 times until he drops the Utensil Poker, a dagger which really doesn't feel like one. Bombing the jungle was the plan for day 60 and went by without a hitch. After levelling out the remains, I placed platforms at the perfect spacings to get the most out of my arena buffs, before accidentally summoning the Martians on day 61. In a time-sensitive challenge, these unnecessary events are really something I'd like to avoid, but thankfully it doesn't take too long to clear through it, and by the end of the day I'm facing off against the Dragon Folly. This baby Yaren takes a few attempts, but on the third, I take him down and collect the Blunder Booster, a rogue accessory with multiple effects including an upwards or diagonal dash, which comes in real handy whenever my flight time runs out. Day 62 is spent on various errands, including farming for the depth meter to craft into the GPS, to craft into the PDA, to craft into the cell phone, to craft into the shell phone, and some fishing. I start day 63 off with my first fight against the reworked Guardians, and I have to say this version is a massive improvement on the old one. By the time this video comes out, I doubt any of you will even remember what they were like before, but they've really come into their own and feel much more distinct. I end up dying a few times before having a successful fight, after which I go straight into an attempt against Providence. I die soon after the Guardians come back for their revenge, so decide I'd fight them in the underworld to hopefully confuse them. That choice causes me to spend the rest of day 63, all of day 64 and the majority of day 65 mining out in arena, which makes an excellent coffin for myself on day 66. Having run my potion stores dry, I spend the rest of the day restocking, before jumping into another attempt on day 67. After defeating Providence, I mine some Yulu Bloom ore in the jungle and combine this with the divine geodes she drops to make Tarragon armour, using the remainder to craft some wings and throwing darts, the 26th dagger of the playthrough. These deal great damage against the next boss I attempted, the Stormweaver, but unfortunately it dealt more damage to me and I admit defeat for now. A boss that definitely won't deal too much damage to me is Cygnus. In fact, he deals no damage to me at all, marking the first and only accidental no-hit of the challenge. From his treasure bag I obtain the next dagger, the Cosmic Kunai, before returning to grinding out the Stormweaver. Eventually, one ends up being successful, and I collect the armoured shell he drops to craft yet another dagger called the Twisting Thunder. The rest of the day was spent fishing in the Brimstone Crag biome, before searching the dungeon on day 69 for the Forsaken Archive. Here I disarm the traps and build out a basic arena before summoning the third and final envoy of the Devourer, the Ceaseless Void. This fight proved to be more difficult than I'd remembered, taking almost a full day of attempts to come out on top. but before the end of day 70 he was defeated, dropping the final item I needed to craft the Cosmic Worm. Much work was needed before my face-off with the Devourer though, so on day 71 I expanded my Hallowed Arena and defeated Providence again for more Divine Geodes, using these to craft yet another dagger, the Shattered Sun. Similar to early hard mode, early post Moonlord has a lot of different options for daggers, but with just 4 left to collect and some of the strongest bosses in the way, this challenge was about to come a lot harder, as proven by the reality check I received from the Devourer of Gods mere minutes later. I'm getting ahead of myself though. There's still another boss I need to defeat before the Devourer, and 2 new daggers I can obtain from it. So for that I head once again to the dungeon where I start my long standoff against the Poltergeist. It wasn't easy, but over the course of 3 days I slowly got better at the fight, leading to my eventual victory. The ruinous souls dropped by the boss can be used for many upgrades, but these aren't the only items required for them. From the Ravager I can now obtain the Bloodstone, which is used to make a highly defensive armour set. Instead I obtain Death, so skip this for now and spend all of day 74 fishing for sulphurous crates. At the time I thought these could drop Reaper Teeth, but it turns out that only happens if you've also defeated the old Duke. So on day 75 I craft the Time Bolt and dive into the Abyss to get some Reaper Teeth the old fashioned way. With these I could craft the Jaws of Oblivion, taking me down to just 2 daggers left to obtain. You may be thinking 25 days is plenty time to collect these, but these daggers are locked behind challenges much greater than the ones I've faced thus far. The Devourer of Gods, a cosmic entity that's hunger can only be satiated by consuming the most powerful of beings. Yaren, the last of the jungle dragons, whose flames are said to hold the power of rebirth. I fear that death alone will not be enough to banish this foe. The Supreme Witch, Calamitas. The tortured remnants of this once innocent soul yearn for nothing more than to see her wrath spread across the world in a wildfire of brimstone flames. Which brings me to the Brimstone Crags on day 76, where I farm enemies for the bloodstone they drop. After returning home, I sacrifice my Time Bolt to the Shimmer in order to get enough ruinous souls to craft Bloodflare armour. Wearing this, I take down the Poltergeist once again and am quickly reunited with my Time Bolt. I had now collected every item I could find to leverage against the Devourer, so all that was left to do was face him. was the dawn of day 81 by the time I defeated the Devourer, and with a sigh of relief I returned home to see what I had unlocked with the Cosmolite bars he dropped. Unfortunately, the answer was currently nothing, because before I could use them I'd have to defeat the buffed moon events. So I planted some pumpkins and summoned the solar eclipse to start. With the dark sun fragments from this I could craft the Eclipse Mirror, a combination of the dark matter sheath and the abyssal mirror. Next is the Frost Moon, which proved to be a lot more difficult than the Eclipse, leading to quite a few deaths. While waiting for the night, I emptied out a bunch of my storage system on day 82 before summoning the Pumpkin Moon after nightfall. Once the event is over, I can finally craft the Ascendant Spirit Essence needed to craft the Nanotech, Godslayer Armour, Elysian Tracers, Core of the Blood God, and after farming way too many Eye of Cthulhu's for the Heart of Darkness, the Occult Skull Crown. In order to craft more, however, I'd have to defeat the Devourer again, which I do on day 84. The upgrades help out a ton, but it's still a difficult fight. With this new influx of Cosmolite, I go to craft even more upgrades, before realising I'm out of endothermic energy, so I have to go through the ordeal that is the Frost Moon once again. After collecting some more, I craft the Asgardian Aegis and some beefier health potions on day 85, before preparing for Yaren through the construction of some arena walls. I then settle in for my first proper attempt against the Fiery Phoenix. I thought this was not bad as a first try, but unfortunately the next two attempts are somehow worse. Thinking some additional defence may help out, I went to craft the Sponge, which I had everything for except the Rover Drive. Now if I told you it took over an entire in-game day using a Battle Potion, Zerg Potion, Water Candle, and a Wolfram Lure to get one of these pre-boss accessories to drop, would you believe me? I swear in most playthroughs I end up with a dozen of these before hard mode, but for some reason in this world it stood as one of the final tests of endgame. Regardless, on the morning of day 87 one finally drops, allowing me to craft the Sponge and get back into Yaren attempts. With just 12 days left of the playthrough, Yaren fell, taking me into the final stretch of the run with only 2 bosses left standing in my way. I scour my world for the auric ore needed to craft the penultimate weapon, the Seraphim. Then, I mine some more to make a full set of auric armour and a dragon fruit, the final health upgrade. On the dawn of day 89, I summon the holder of the final dagger, the Supreme Witch, Calamity. The witch's brimstone flames continued to overwhelm me, but as I entered the last 10 days of the challenge, I knew I had to step it up. And step it up I did. Not only did I manage to defeat Calamity with just under 10 days to spare, I also got lucky enough for her to drop the final dagger of the playthrough, marking the end of my challenge, but not the end of this run, as there was still one final boss that needed put in its place. As one of the bosses I had the least experience with, the exomechs put up a hell of a fight. But day 92 marked the end of their reign and the surprisingly early end of this playthrough. This playthrough was a lot of fun, and I'd recommend it to anyone looking for a new challenge in Calamity. Given how often the mod updates, it's likely your playthrough could be very different to the one you've seen here. But either way, I hope you have fun with it. Make sure to leave a like and comment if you made it this far in the video. It does a lot to help the channel out. And lastly, thanks for watching.